I was married to him for 40 years, 40 Christmases, 40 birthdays, 40 winters spent keeping the house warm, making sure his tea was ready just the way he liked it, with a slice of lemon, not too hot. And yet, one ordinary Tuesday morning, he stood in the kitchen, not looking me in the eye, and said, "I think I need something different, someone younger." That's how it ended. Not with a fight, not even with a tear. Just a man, nearly 70, convinced that I, the woman who'd stood by him through every unpaid bill, every hospital visit, every moment of self-doubt, had become disposable. He packed a small suitcase, his good shoes, the new aftershave our daughter gave him for Christmas. And then he left. He didn't even take his wedding ring. I found it later on the bathroom counter, next to his toothbrush, like trash someone forgets to throw away. I didn't scream. I didn't chase him. I just stood in the doorway of my kitchen, holding the dish towel, my hands trembling like a leaf in the wind. I remember the smell of burnt toast. Funny what the mind clings to when your life unravels. My name is Margaret. I'm 67 years old. I raised 2 children. I worked part-time jobs for decades just to keep the lights on when my husband's business went under in the 90s. I gave up promotions, vacations, friendships. I gave up myself, little by little, so our family could have a future. And I did it quietly, because that's what women of my generation were taught. Hold the family together. Don't make a fuss. Be grateful he comes home, even when he came home angry, even when he came home late, even when he forgot anniversaries or remembered them too late. For years I told myself that's just what marriage is. That's just what men do. I thought that if I stayed loyal, if I stayed patient, he'd remember what we built. He'd see me, but I was wrong. The worst part wasn't him leaving. It was the silence afterward. Our daughter didn't even call. Our son, bless him, said, "Maybe it's for the best, Mum. You can start fresh." As if I were 30, as if I had the energy to begin again after spending my entire life building a house someone else burned down. Friends from church smiled at me with that pity in their eyes. At the grocery store, I overheard someone whisper, "Isn't that Margaret? The one whose husband ran off with that Pilates girl?" Yes, that was me. In the weeks that followed, the house felt haunted. Not by ghosts, but by absence. His empty chair at the dinner table, the echo of the news playing too loud in the living room. His slippers, still by the door, like they were waiting for feet that weren't coming back. I tried to fill the silence, with music, with chores, even with the old sewing machine I hadn't touched in years. But grief is a quiet creature. It doesn't scream. It seeps. It curled itself into the corners of my chest until even breathing felt like effort. Some nights I'd walk into our bedroom and forget, just for a second, that he wasn't there. I'd glance at his pillow, untouched, still fluffed the way I always made it, and my heart would stutter. That's when I started sleeping in the guest room. And then came the photos. She posted everything. Brunches, weekend getaways, a new necklace held up proudly in the palm of her hand with a caption that said, "Some men know how to treat a woman." She was at least 25 years younger than me, long dark hair, sharp nails, eyes that smiled but didn't soften. I stared at those pictures longer than I care to admit, not out of jealousy, not really, out of confusion. How does a man share decades of his life with someone, then erase her in weeks? How does a woman hold the same hand that once reached for mine in the dark? One afternoon I noticed something. It was in a photo, her sitting in his car, holding a travel mug I'd bought him 3 birthdays ago. But it wasn't the mug. It was the scarf around her neck. It looked familiar, very familiar. It had belonged to a woman named Edith, a friend from church. Edith had passed away the year before, under difficult circumstances. Her memory had been fading, and she'd moved to a care home just before her son found her accounts emptied. I remembered the story, I remembered the whispers, and suddenly I remembered something else. At the time, Edith had mentioned a young woman who'd been volunteering at the care home. "So sweet," she said, "always helping with the pills. I gave her a few of my things, you know." I felt the blood drain from my face. Could it be her? No, it couldn't. But the scarf, the timing, the sudden charm, the lavish gifts, the way she clung to older men like a vine climbing a crumbling wall. I told myself I was being paranoid, jealous, delusional. But I knew that voice in my head. It was the same one that had told me to ignore the late nights, the missed calls, the cold silences. This time, I listened. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my old laptop, dusted off the keyboard, and typed her name. First nothing, then too much. Different names, a trail of short-term jobs, old charity pages now deleted. And then, buried in a forgotten blog post from an elder care foundation, a photo, her, smiling, holding up a Volunteer of the Month certificate. The caption read, "Sabrina W., bringing warmth to the residents of Havenbrook Home." The date? 1 month before Edith's bank accounts were frozen. I leaned back in my chair. My hands weren't trembling, not this time. I printed what I found and placed it carefully in a manila folder, the old kind, the ones we used before everything went digital. Something about the weight of it felt real, intentional. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I wasn't going to tell him, not in person, not through tears. He had made his choice. Now I was making mine. Over the next few weeks, I gathered more. A handful of screenshots, a copy of an old obituary. I even went to the local library and found a newspaper article from 2 years ago. A man in another town who had fallen in love with a younger caregiver and lost his entire pension. There was no photo, but the description, the timing, it was enough. I didn't need to be certain beyond a shadow of a doubt. I just needed to be quiet, thorough, and patient. One morning, I sent 3 anonymous envelopes, one to his lawyer, one to his bank, and one to our son, the only one who still answered my calls. Each envelope contained a note typed on my old typewriter. No handwriting, no trace, just the facts, the patterns, the names. And one sentence at the bottom. "Look closely at who surrounds him now. Ask yourself why." I didn't expect a response. I didn't need one. And then, the silence changed. 2 weeks passed before I heard anything. I wasn't even thinking about it when the phone rang. It was our son. His voice was tight, unfamiliar. "Mom, are you sitting down?" I told him I was. He said Sabrina, or whatever her real name was, had disappeared. She drained several accounts, including one tied to the house. The lawyer had flagged suspicious signatures. The bank froze assets. There were pending investigations. My husband, my ex-husband, had tried to contact her for days. Nothing. She was gone. And now he was alone. He'd lost his savings, his pride, and his illusion of youth, all in one quiet surgical cut. Our son paused. Then he asked something I wasn't ready for. "Did you know something?" I told him the truth. I had a feeling, and then softer. I just wanted him to see who she really was, the way he refused to see who I'd always been. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. I didn't look young. My skin was soft, lined like paper left in the sun. But I saw something else now. Not rage, not triumph, peace. He'd destroyed our history for a fantasy, and the fantasy had swallowed him whole. I hadn't raised my voice, I hadn't made a scene, I hadn't begged, I hadn't broken. I had simply waited. It was early evening when I heard the knock at the door. 3 slow knocks, hesitant, familiar. I didn't have to look through the window. I knew it was him. I felt it, like a chill that settles deep in the bones. I opened the door. He looked smaller, not physically, but in spirit. His shoulders hunched, his clothes unpressed. His eyes, once so sure of themselves, wouldn't meet mine. He stood there for a moment, holding his hands like he didn't know what to do with them. Then he said my name. Not Mags, the nickname he used when he wanted something. Just Margaret. I waited. He cleared his throat, glanced down at his shoes. I didn't know where else to go. I said nothing. I didn't step aside. I wanted him to feel that threshold, the space between the life he abandoned and the one I had rebuilt without him. I made a mistake, he whispered. She wasn't who I thought. I almost smiled, almost, but instead I nodded slowly. I know. He blinked. You know? I knew the moment I saw the way she looked at you, like you were a ticket, not a person. He let out a breath, something between shame and disbelief. I lost everything. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel hatred. I felt clarity. He looked behind me, into the house. It looks the same. No, I said, it doesn't. Not anymore. Silence stretched between us. A silence filled with all the things he didn't say for 40 years, all the dinners eaten in silence, all the anniversaries missed, all the nights I cried alone while he pretended not to notice. He tried once more. Could we just talk? Maybe have some tea? And maybe, years ago, I would have let him. Maybe I would have sat across from him again, serving tea with lemon just the way he liked it, praying for crumbs of affection. But I was no longer the woman who waited. So I stepped outside, closed the door gently behind me, and said the words I'd never said to him before. No. His eyes filled, but I didn't look away. You left me for an illusion, and now that it's gone, you think I'm still here waiting. But I buried that woman the day you walked out. I'm not her anymore. I turned and walked past him, down the steps into the golden light of dusk, and he stayed behind. I didn't look back, not when I reached the gate, not when I heard the soft sound of his footsteps fading behind me. I walked. At first I didn't know where I was going, but I ended up at the park, the one we used to take the kids to when they were small. I sat on a bench under the old oak tree, the one with initials carved into it, not ours. Someone else's story. I watched the light shift through the branches. I watched a little girl run to her grandmother with a fistful of dandelions. I watched a man open the car door for his wife like it was second nature. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt full, not with anger, not with sadness, with breath. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need anyone to clap for me. What I had done, quietly, deliberately, was reclaim something far more powerful than payback. I reclaimed myself. In the weeks that followed, I changed small things. I moved the furniture, repainted the walls in colors that made me smile. I joined a book club, took walks every morning with a thermos of coffee. I started learning Italian, something I'd always wanted to do but never had permission to want. And then one Sunday at the farmer's market, I met someone. Not someone younger, someone kind. We didn't fall in love that day, but he asked me what I liked to read, and he listened, really listened. I realized then, love isn't fireworks and declarations. Sometimes it's just being seen, quietly, fully, without conditions. Looking back, I don't regret the 40 years I gave. They made me who I am. They gave me my children. They taught me how deeply I can love, even when it hurts. But I don't owe anyone the rest of me, especially not someone who only noticed my worth once it was too late. So to anyone who has been discarded, overlooked, forgotten. Please hear me. You are not invisible. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are becoming. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated and found strength in silence? I'd love to hear your story. Thank you for listening.